Uh,
Yeah.
so where are you guys at right now? I mean, obviously we're still in semi-quarantine lockdown situations. We're obviously not all in the same room. So, Michael, Daniel, where are you guys calling in from?
Yeah, we're in Champaign-Urbana, like in Illinois, because we actually just right before shutdown, we launched the University of Illinois as like our second campus for Nomad rides. So yeah.
So you're both, are you guys living in the same house or no?
Hmm.
We are.
Are you guys in the same room?
No, we're in opposite rooms. Daniel's in his room and I am in mine.
That's
No.
awesome. Go ahead.
And did you just rent like student housing or?
Yeah, so that's kind of like the fun thing we do, like with Nomad, is because we're college focused, we like rented just a home in in the college town that we work in, and so we all just kind of live together and work together and nomad to the place that we're actually like marketing and focusing on growing.
And even like all our like drivers, they come over, like they call it our office, and they come over and we just work out of our home. Like we're still pretty garage level startup.
Like any good startup.
Yeah.
The garage. Yeah, so we keep throwing around this name, Nomad Rides. What is it? Talk about it. How did it come to be? And where did you guys meet? I guess we should start there. So introductions from each of you, and where did you guys meet? And then we'll kind of get into the idea and where Nomad Rides came from.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so like where we initially met, well, where we like very first met was in high school. I threw a party and Mike ended up coming to the party, and that's where Mike says he met me. I don't remember meeting Mike then. But then it was like our freshman year. So the reason Mike came over, because his friend I played basketball in high school with, because Mike went to Chittard High School. I went to North Central High School. And so his friend I played basketball, like summer basketball with. And then when we both went to Indiana University. And during our freshman year, I met another friend actually playing basketball. And then we ended up becoming friends that freshman year, going on like spring break together. And then our sophomore years at Indiana University, we ended up rooming together in a house down off like 2nd Street of Bloomington. So that's kind of how we like became friends, just through like just kind of mutual friends. And we were always just kind of doing our own separate things. Like Mike did a lot of freelancing, whether it was like raking leaves or manual labor, like hauling ice, like whatever it was, Mike was doing stuff. And I was always doing stuff like tutoring. Like we just always had like our separate things. And we always just enjoyed like when we were at our house at IU, we would always have like, it was kind of funny. We had like a top floor and bottom floor of our house. And we would just like stay up until 3 a.m. every night, like talking about some different topic, just like all over the map stuff. So that's kind of like when we just became really good friends, obviously, but we started like always thinking about different things. So yeah, that's kind of how we met. If you want to add anything, Mike.
Yeah, and then so like going into the creation of Nomad and all of that good stuff. So when we were sophomores, Daniel was a student and a roommate at IU, and he decided to drop out of school. And I had continued my education from there. And that was the period of time where Daniel was teaching himself how to code and just doing his own kind of separate off the beaten path thing. And I was maintaining it in school. And then Daniel, I think it was MLK Day, our junior year, was when you were officially going back to Brown, because you were going to start back at school. And we had this idea for an app startup for like a freelancing marketplace. And it was just like anywhere, like if you want to find a tutor, if you want to find somebody to do your laundry, if you want to find somebody to cut your hair, then you could go on this application and find somebody. Because on the college campus, that was like, Daniel talks about our side hustles. That was one of the fun things that I always did, was I was always like in the fraternity doing whatever I can, pay my way through school and all that good stuff. And then we started that while we were both full-time students, and that was just like extremely difficult. Like we didn't really understand what we were doing at all. And it was just like a huge learning phase for the next year and a half, really, of up until like my graduation. And that's when B-Town Rides came about, where we started like a $5 rides anywhere on campus startup when we were seniors. which like was a crazy time. And it was the first time we saw, maybe second time, but first time we saw like explosive growth in in our product. And it was like,
Were
awesome.
you guys actually driving for B-Town rides, or like when you started, did you already have people that were willing to drive?
So kind of like the crazy creation story, because like we got so tired of like so I guess I'll start with why we started as a texting service, because like we were building apps and it'd like take us a while to build things, and so we got really good at just like how do you release something so fast where you don't have to like spend time building it. And so like our thing was like, all right, we want to try this like rideshare service. So we literally just started a Google Voice account where it was like, hey, we put it all on all of our phones. We had a third co-founder at the time, someone who went to my high school. His name's Asher Hall. He's a great guy. But anyway, we basically had this Google Voice account that we hooked up to Michael and Asher's phone. At the time, I was in California. And then what we did is we just went around and we said, hey, anyone can text this number, get a $5 ride anywhere on campus. And it was on all like Michael and Asher's phone. And then I was in California and I would just like dispatch the ride to different people. And that first night we had like 30 people use us, just like this $5 ride service. And the reason we tested that way is because like everyone we talked to is like, you can never compete with Uber. Like no one will use your app. We're like, all right, well, we'll just try it. And if like no one used our texting service, fine. It took us like one night and a flyer to build. And so like, that's how we literally launched the first service, was just like, you know, Mike and Asher were the first two drivers. And that's kind of how we built our $5 ride boxes. We didn't even know how to price it because we were like, well, if we text, there's no like address, like price algorithm. It's kind of hard to build. So we were just like, all right, $5 rides, maybe it's profitable, maybe it's not. Let's just try it. And it was just really popular that first night. The next night we had strangers texting us like, hey, can I get a ride? Because like the number had been passed around. So at that point we were like, all right, there's something pretty powerful here. So then that's when we started building out the app.
So what were you guys using to like, were people dropping pins to this number? Like how did that back end all work in terms of just like knowing where to go to pick somebody up and where to go to drop somebody off?
So I think we got to the point where we would like send them a photo. So they would text us, you're supposed to text us like, hey, I want a ride. And then we would send you a photo that said like, tell us your address, tell us your name.
Yeah. And what taught us how to do that. So I don't know how many people are familiar with this, like the concept of the milk movers. And this was a thing that we had created to advertise our previous like non-traction getting app. And it was like, we created a milk delivery service with our goofy friends where we were just like, we'll dress up in a cow costume, we'll deliver you milk. Because we were like, maybe this is something people will use.
Where were you getting the milk from?
Kroger. But people just text us need milk. And it was just like, okay, where? Like, where do you want it delivered to? Because it's like, it's a simple thing. It's like, if you want milk delivery, like, where do you want it? And so when we first did rides, we were like, okay, we spun it up with Asher like that day. And we're like, what? Like, okay, text us need ride and then tell us where you want to be picked up and where you want to go. And for a driver, like as long as you know that information, like it's not overly complicated.
And so what Milk Movers was our other roommate who actually lived with us in our house had this idea that he wanted to be able to order milk and it would come in a cow costume.
Yeah, because the first thing you run out of when you go to the grocery store is milk.
Yeah. And so he ended up
those 3 a.m. conversations.
Yeah, pretty much. And so we launched this service because we thought it was funny and we thought the name was funny. And then someone ended up taking a video of Mike, because we would literally dress up in cow costumes and go deliver the milk. And someone took a video of Michael and it ended up getting like 12 million views on Facebook. And we started getting so many texts to our Google Voice account, they just shut it entirely down. And then like, because the whole goal, we were trying to get people on our app, and then a bunch of people downloaded our app and they just started like, they tried to start up their own milk movers. Like they were asking like, can we do this like in our town? And we were like, sure, but it's not that fun. So like that was the origin of Milk Movers. So we learned how to build this like Google Voice thing, and we saw the power of just like virality mixed with like the whole concept when we came into rideshare is like, it doesn't cost that much. Like Uber takes $3-4 on a ride to connect a rider and a driver. And we're like, it doesn't cost almost anything to connect a rider and a driver. And that was kind of like our first insight when it was with Milk Movers, like the concept of like on-demand freelancing.
Right. And so was a lot of this just based around how fast and how many people can you get interested in this app that you're creating? Like, were you using that to gauge whether or not you should keep it going? Because that's the second time you guys have mentioned, like, we just wanted to get people to download the app.
Yeah, I think that's where we've always been, is just like, how do you build something that people really want? And we always were talking about this concept of like power users. So this, like, we always want to find, because we would get people who use our Gigio app for like freelancing, like for like hair barbers or like laundry or something, but it'd be like one or two per week. We're like, all right, we need to find like a power user, like someone who uses us like 3 or 4 times a day, where we can just get like 10 of those people to just use us over and over again. And we were kind of like, all right, well, like, you get your haircut once a week, you need milk maybe twice a week. What's something people use like every day? And we were like, oh, it's rideshare. Like, our friends literally will use that like 3 times a day, 3 or 4 times a day. So that we kind of thought about like our power users of rideshare. And then we were like, oh, but Uber already exists. Like, we can't do that. So we actually shelved the idea for like, I remember our conversation. We were like, oh, that'd be interesting. But then we're like, let's just, Uber exists. Like, let's just forget about it. And then Asher, our third co-founder at the time, called me up. It was like 6 months later. And he was like, I've got this idea for commission-free food delivery. We were like, well, I don't know about that, because it'd be hard to make money off ads. But we had this idea for commission-free rideshare. And then that's when we were like, all right, well, here's how you launch it with this texting service. And that's kind of how it all started.
So talk about what the structure is for that commission-free rideshare. I know I kind of jumped in and out of this because of Zoom, but if you haven't talked about it, just share how it works.
Yeah, absolutely. That's something we've always felt like is very core to our business and what we believe in as like people, and as like for our company, is the idea of like commission-free service. Like the idea that 0% of what, like, or 100% of what the passenger pays to the driver should go to the driver. That the company itself should not be making money off of the actual transaction.
Yeah, and that's where with Gigio was like our freelancer app, and then everything we've done, like, we were kind of the freelancers on the app. So we're just like the commission, the money you make is almost like sacrosanct. Like, when you're a freelancer or whatever, like, the cool part is that like you kind of like own your own business. So we were always like, we're selling you a tool, and then what you are is like, you get to keep everything. So like the short example of like how we explain, Nomad in a few sentences is like, we're the first commission-free rideshare service. So what that means is Uber and Lyft normally take a 40% commission. And what we do is we don't take anything. So our riders pay 20% less, and then drivers make 20% more. And the way we make money is drivers pay us a monthly subscription to access the app. And it's kind of like a cognitive shift from what Uber does, because Uber treats their drivers almost like employees. We're like, no. Our drivers are like, they're their own business, and we're just a software company selling them the tools to run their own business.
So then do you get out of all the liability and having to do security checks on your drivers and stuff, because really they're just using your app?
Yes. So it's kind of like a spectrum where like we still have to run like the background checks, and like we still have to like run their driving records. But what we do is we say like, hey, we sell those things to you at cost. So if it costs us $40, we just have this thing called an annual fee that just covers the background check. And things like insurance, like we help you hook into insurance and credit card processing, but you just pay, we show you exactly what it costs, the credit card fees, the insurance, and then you keep everything else. So it's almost like a Shopify site where it's like, they do show you like, here's how much you pay with credit card, here's how much you paid with whatever else you did, like the shipping, but you see exactly what it is. And then you just pay Shopify a monthly subscription to access, to like have a website.
Talk a little bit about the timeline. I mean, you guys haven't been around that long, but I feel like growth has been fast, and interest in what you're doing has come relatively quickly. So if you can kind of give us important dates on kind of how you guys have grown or things that have been accomplished.
Yeah, absolutely. So February of 2019, that was when me and Daniel both took Nomad full time. So that was when we both kind of like dove back in to the whole idea of commission-free rideshare, and really engaged in it like hardcore. And that's when that was the time where, so you asked earlier about us driving, like, oh, did you guys drive? And that semester was like a big time where we like drove. we like drove nonstop. Like every day we'd wake up and drive from like 11 a.m. to like 3 a.m. And we completed like probably about 1,800 rides a piece during that time. Because the big question mark it has always been is like our reliability is pretty crap. And we were like, when we were B-Town rides, we had drivers, we signed up, and it was student-only drivers. And so we were just like, okay, like the one thing we need to do is see like, can we work together on this and actually build a company? And can like, let's see how high we can get in terms of ride volume, because that's the biggest thing. It's like, okay, if you have high ride volume, you can help drivers earn more drivers you can help earn more, the more money the company can make. And so we really dove back in like February 2019 into Nomads. We road tripped out and then went to Bloomington after that road trip, and we basically just like re-engaged the company and just saw like really explosive user growth. So we like saw like explosive user growth to the point of probably like, so little 5 of that year, which is like IU's big party weekend. On that Saturday, I think we hit like 1,020 ride requests that day, just in the Bloomington area. And so on that date, we were like, okay, like the show stops because we had been operating illegally up until that point without the proper like TNC license and TNC insurance. And we gave the disclaimer to our drivers like, hey, we don't have this insurance and you have to like, we're not making any money here, but please understand, like, we want you to make money, but we don't offer this insurance. So it's kind of on you. It's like you're transporting your friends and you're getting paid via Venmo on every ride. So we weren't even facilitating credit card transaction either. And so we basically drew that line in the sand after that little 5-day. And we were like, okay, like we're stopping and we're going to go raise money and we're going to go get insurance and get licensed. And so that was like April of 2019. And we went through after that and just like started taking to the emails and sending people emails about like, hey, we're trying to raise money. Like we know we need this amount for insurance, and we think we need about this much to get it going like fully legally. And that's when we were hitting the bottom of the well with our contacts in Indiana. And Daniel had reached out to Michael Seibel, who's a current partner at Y Combinator out in San Francisco. And Michael replied to our email and was like, hey, like, you guys should apply. And we were like, oh, really? That's pretty awesome. And so the application was like, the application date had passed. And so then we applied, and that would have been like late May, like right after the Indy 500 in May. And then we're lucky enough to go through Y Combinator. And so for those unfamiliar, so Y Combinator is basically like the #1 accelerator program in like the world, really. You have pretty amazing companies that have come out of there, like Stripe, like Airbnb, like Reddit. And so we went through that program, got to learn from some incredible people all of last summer. And coming out of that, there's like a demo day where you pitch in front of a ton of investors in Silicon Valley. I got to meet Joe Montana, which was like one of the highlights of my life. And then, from there it was, we were able to raise money, and we went back to Bloomington again full time right after that, and just went right back to our users.
Yeah. And so like here's a funny story from like our early days of like how much we were driving is like, when we started out, we only had one car that like my friend loaned me his like kind of beater car. And it was one car for the two of Mike, and Mike and I would take like shifts driving, because like we didn't have any drivers who were reliable. So Mike and I were like, we're going to hold this service up just by driving ourselves. And so basically one kid was using us a lot over and over again. And he started riding with me, and he was like, so is this rideshare service just one car with different drivers? And like, that's how we started. And we just like kind of bootstrapped the company of just like, I mean, we were driving a lot of hours, but we were each making almost like $1,000 a week. Not the company, just us driving and getting Venmo'd $5 for every ride.
Wow.
And so like, that's just how we started the company, and it just started going insane. What'd you say?
I said, were people leaving tips?
Somewhat. Sometimes one person left Mike a tip because he was selling candy out of his car, because that's how we thought we were going to monetize. They thought he was like trying to survive by selling candy. So they gave him like a $10 tip.
They felt really bad for me.
What kind of candy were you selling? Like Laffy Taffy or something?
So our original business model was, we thought we were going to put vending machines in every car and sell like Skittles and like Laffy, like just like concession stand food inside the car.
Which I still think has a lot of promise, but it's not like a good chocolate logistics are a real pain.
And Mike had people who started stealing candy from him.
Oh no.
Yeah, that's where you guys were when I last talked to, like, had a really good conversation with you, Mike, about just like what was happening. So it's amazing to think of like how far, I mean, that was probably a year ago. So you guys have made big moves since, maybe more than that, probably a year and a half ago, big moves since then. And, you know, the Y Combinator, I remember listening to the Airbnb episode where they had a similar experience with you where they didn't apply in time and someone gave them an extension.
Yeah, it's the same guy, Michael Seibel. The same guy.
So hopefully that has like a good, you know, there's good karma that comes with that.
Yeah, hopefully.
Daniel, what did your email say to him? Like, what did you send to him? Do you still have that email? Did you frame it? Did you print it out?
Well, so he has a blog, and I read his blog because he was really interesting. But he just said, I answer any email and I'll try and help you out. And the format is, you can only do 3 sentences. Like, tell me what's the problem. Tell me how I can help. There's just like 3 things you can say, and you get like 3 sentences. So I was just like, okay, we're growing so fast, all of our servers are crashing. Can you introduce us to some angel investors? And it was just like a 2-sentence email like that. And maybe I explained 1 sentence what Nomad was. But it was just, I think the thing that caught his eye was like, all our servers are crashing.
Yeah, that would catch my attention.
Yeah. Because that's what would happen is we would get these days where we just do like hundreds of rides, and just like we would have a list. Like sometimes we'd only have 1 or 2 drivers out, and we just have a list of rides all the way going down of like people wanting rides. And like all our servers would start to get slower and slower on these like big Friday nights at IU.
My gosh. So what do you think the biggest lesson was that you guys took away from being at Y Combinator? Like if there was like a cheat code that you guys got there that really helped accelerate you to get to the next level, what would you say that was?
The way I always define Y Combinator is like, normally when you start a company, all the odds are against you, right? You've got like, you don't have a lot of money. You're like co-founders, like maybe someone has a job, maybe they're like, they've got different things pulling at them. You're like, you're not in Silicon Valley. You don't, like, investors don't want to talk to you. No one's really trying to mentor you. So like all the odds are usually stacked against you. When you go to Y Combinator, they stack all the odds in your favor. They make it really easy to raise money. They force all the co-founders to go full-time, move to Silicon Valley. They give you $150,000. They give you like phenomenal mentorship. They give you access to a network of like incredible companies like Airbnb, and they'll just like, you'll send them an email and they'll just help you out. So it's like, that's the way I define it. Is like, it doesn't mean your company's going to succeed, but it does put all the odds in your favor if you have like an Airbnb or something like that.
Absolutely. It's something like I'm super appreciative too, looking back on it. And just that perspective on like how Silicon Valley like runs and operates was like super valuable to learn and understand, as to like things like you hear us say, like talk to your users, or like build something people want. Like there's very simple like phrases, but going out there and like learning, okay, this is how people who have done this sort of thing before, like think about a startup, was very valuable.
This is kind of a silly question. Can you describe Silicon Valley? Like,
you ever seen the TV show?
The TV show. I've obviously never been there. But when you get there, is it just like a town with like rows of just like?
Yeah. See, I always say it's like a regular California town. It's like you wouldn't, if you were driving around the streets, with the exception of seeing the signs for companies like Facebook and Google, it's very much a normal place. But what's extraordinary there is the support. It's like people are willing, and they're willing to trust a couple of 24-year-old guys walking down the street and say, hey, let's give them a chunk of money because we think they have the potential to do something really great.
Yeah, I thought it was gonna be like a Wizard of Oz type city, but it's like it's kind of just like Carmel. Like at least Mountain View is part of Silicon Valley. Like it's just like Carmel, but like kind of like a California version. But so it's like very unassuming. San Francisco is really weird because it is one of the most dystopian, like the dichotomy of homelessness versus like extreme wealth in San Francisco I've never seen. It's insane. But other than that, you wouldn't notice. But the real difference of Silicon Valley is like it is a totally different ecosystem. We tried to raise money on the East Coast in the Midwest, and everyone's like, they don't really want to invest. But in Silicon Valley, like there's every tranche of your company from early stage, seed stage to like Series F stage. They have people who will like fund you. It's just like they built this whole ecosystem for startups that just like I've never seen anywhere else.
I've always been just like critical of Silicon Valley, like, oh, it can't be that good, but you're making it actually sound that good.
Yeah. Well, there's other sides to it where I'm like, after being from the Midwest, we're like, a lot of the problems they solve out there are not problems that your average person cares about. That's what another part we saw is like people like want to build a bunch of companies, like help software developers get jobs, which I'm sure makes a lot of money for that company, but it's not like trying to solve like a big problem. Like our thing is like, we have a lot of middle American people who like really like what we're doing because we're saying, hey, like we're going to help you make 10-20% more than you usually make. And we're going to treat you like normal people. Because like right now it's a lot of like people working for technology when it should always be technology working for people.
Yeah, there are absolutely a lot of negatives as well to that area.
And how the people who are working with you, how did they react to your product? Did they challenge you with like the Uber model, saying like, well, you'll never make money? Uber.
That's exactly what they said. Like word for word, they said you'll never make any money. But no, there's a lot of people, like actually a lot of people we talk to, they either like love the idea or they like hate it with a passion. Like there aren't a lot of people in the middle. But yeah, that was the big thing is people are like, how do you compete with Uber? How are you going to make any money when Uber already loses money? So yeah, there's a lot of people who are just like, don't like the idea.
And what did you say to that? How do you answer those questions? How do you compete with Uber? How do you make money when Uber's already losing money?
Yeah, so the big thing with competing with Uber is like, obviously like we're just kind of like the cheaper option. And actually what we're doing is like, so Uber spent like billions of dollars to like take down basically like the taxis, like build this thing called transportation network companies, build the infrastructure, build the insurance. Now we can walk in, what cost them $1 billion. We got a TNC license in Indiana for just $100, right? So it's like regulatory arbitrage where you can get all the benefits of Uber with none of like the sunk cost. So we can come and do that. And like a lot of ways what we're doing is we're almost like the Southwest Airlines of rideshare. We're much cheaper than the other airlines who came about because we can like do things that just help drop the cost, like not taking the commission, having cheaper insurance, stuff like that.
As long as you didn't say Spirit Airlines, because then I would like that's I love me some Southwest though.
So coming back, obviously you brought some money with you, which is fantastic. But what else did you take because I mean, like back up a little bit, was the company still running while you were in Silicon Valley living your dreams?
No. So it's kind of funny how we shut down. We after that little 5-day where we had like over 1,000 ride requests in one day, we just like shut the app down, put a banner up that says, hey, we have to go get legal. And like, it just like shut down and then we brought it back. So it was kind of like restarting the company because now we had to like add in credit card processing, insurance. We at the time we were only student to student driving. You could only drive if you were a student. And so when we came back, like we started signing up Uber drivers.
Which really changed the game. And it took us a lot of time, like when we were out there, like the insurance took us like a full month and a half just to like, because we're like searching around, like where do you get this huge insurance policy? And it wasn't until Y Combinator that it was like we had the actual funds in place that we could pay for something like that. So we were like, and then it was kind of funny, we always joke about, like we came back in the middle of July. Like July 4th was the day that I think we got approved for the insurance on like the 3rd. And then we hopped on a red eye as we did that summer. and came back to Indianapolis. We were like, well, the college towns aren't up and going right now. Might as well launch Indianapolis. And that was like kind of like the hezzy hey, like we launched into Indianapolis. And then we were like, August rolled around. We were like, wait, this isn't the best market for us. Why are we here? And went back to Bloomington.
Talk about that, because you actually reached out to me about it, and I was just like, man,
yeah.
How do you infiltrate? Because it's one thing for colleges, because kids are really looking for cheaper options, but in Indianapolis, it's not. You don't have that same market. So talk about that experience.
Yeah, Daniel always talks about in the college markets, like one of the things that's most beneficial is like a high velocity of places. Like you think about how a kid is going to, like they're waking up in the morning, they're going to get breakfast at the food court, maybe they're going to this building for this class, this building for that class, they're going home, maybe getting dinner with friends, they're going out at night, they're maybe going to a pregame. So it's like that high velocity of places is very helpful in a college market. And also like they're all talking to each other in that area where it's like they spread the word of like, oh, what's a cool thing to do. And I think I was going somewhere else with that. Oh yeah, and because it's like, and it was something too with like in Indy, like we always feel bad, and it's because it's like so awesome, because when we do launch Indy, it's like we want it to succeed so bad, like because everybody like we know and love and care about are like in that city, and it's like we want Nomad to like be successful, and we want our mothers to be able to use Nomad rides. Like that's the thing we like to say, and it's like, but it's just like it's not as conducive at times. And so you have to like, you really have to get both sides of that marketplace. You have to get not just somebody who's requesting a ride for the $5.50 or whatever, but you also have to get a driver, and a driver is not going to waste their time being dedicated to only Nomad unless there's a certain level of rides in a day. And so that's why we always talk about like users and rides in a day, and all those metrics are very important to us, because it's like we have to get it to a certain level where one driver can pay attention to Nomad and sustain themselves and their families and their income based on driving Nomad, or else it's just like everything kind of just crumbles down, which is kind of where we're at in the current scenario with coronavirus and the mass exodus of college students from our towns, where we're really like back to the grindstone as to like, feels like we're restarting the company all over again.
Do you guys see yourselves just staying mainly on like college campuses?
Yeah, like, well, pre-coronavirus, we definitely did. Like, our whole plan is to go through all the Big Ten college campuses. This is something like our Y Combinator partners were like, don't touch Indianapolis. Like, you figured out Bloomington. You've built something really special there. If you just take this through the top 50 college towns, then like, you'll have a pretty big company at that point, and then you can parlay that into the cities. But really dominate the niche you've built, which is like college towns. Because college towns are like the most perfect place to build this rideshare company. Because like if you wanted to start in San Francisco, you would need 1,000 cars overnight because it's a bigger city. You'd have to go out and get a bunch of users. In Bloomington, it's like a 3-mile radius where like there's the college, and then outside of it's cornfields. So if you get 2 drivers up like we did, where we were the first 2 drivers, instantly you have economies of scale. And then you've got, they're the most viral places on earth, where actually large college campuses like IU are some of the most high dense population areas in the entire United States. So what we've always compared this to is like, if you ever read the story of Walmart, what Sam Walton did is he didn't touch the big cities. He went through like Bentonville, Arkansas, like West Lafayette, Indiana, these small towns of like 50,000 people, and just dominated them like a prize fighter, and just went 42 ways through these different towns. 42 times he dominated them before he ever touched the big cities. And that was the Walmart story. And so we're doing the same thing with rideshare. Like all the other rideshare companies who have attempted what we do, they try and go into the big cities, and we're doing the opposite. We're starting on the small ones, and we're just going to become dominant in those before the cities.
That's awesome. Do you ever see an opportunity for, I know you mentioned that the drivers pay there's like a subscription model there for the app. Is there an opportunity for riders to have like a monthly subscription plan for anything like that?
Yeah, I always say there is, if like it depends on the pricing, right? Like you have to pay a driver out for every ride he gives. Mm-hmm. And so it's like you have to price the subscription correctly, where it's like the number of uses they take has to be within those parameters.
Right.
But if somebody wants to pay enough for it, like, I mean, you can pay a subscription.
We'll just create our own.
Absolutely.
So what cities are you in currently? I know COVID's messed with everything, but say prior to COVID, how many cities were you in?
We were in two. We were in Bloomington was like our main marketplace, and then we had just launched Urbana-Champaign, which is like University of Illinois.
Mm-hmm. And how was that going?
It was going really well. We were starting to pick up steam. We were starting to find like our power users, like people who are using us. We had some kids who were using us 2 or 3 times a day here. We were starting to get drivers, building the, like, we have a group chat of all our drivers. They get really excited to like watch us build this thing and like start to take down Uber. That's what a lot of our drivers drive for us just because they despise Uber. So anyway, but it was starting to pick up, and then obviously coronavirus, we get hit extra hard because rideshare got hit, but then all the colleges shut down. We're kind of dependent on colleges too. So yeah, it's kind of where we are now.
Yeah. And we were doing like 1,000 rides on weekend nights before everything happened. And so we were right there at the precipice here in Champaign of like really learning how to open a new market. And it was getting painful because all of the customer service was coming like directly to my phone.
Oh no.
And it was just like, so it's been a welcome change of pace within this time as well, because we can kind of take a couple steps back. We've made some really awesome software improvements, product improvements, and then we're kind of just like going back in the ring right now, trying to grow Champaign again.
What was the decision to go there versus like Purdue or Ohio State or Michigan State, anybody else in the Big Ten?
So the way the licensing works, it's kind of like on a state by state basis. So we could have gone to like Purdue right away, or University of Illinois doesn't need a license. Champaign-Urbana doesn't require a license. So it's just kind of like our regulatory structure made it easy to go there like literally right away. And we just kind of wanted to get out of Indiana for a bit.
Yep. Makes sense.
What were some of the changes that you've been making during this time to improve the program?
Yeah, our driver app, our like the one the drivers use to accept rides and everything, it's public now, so it's on the App Store, which is awesome. It's something like simple, but every time a driver came to sign up, I would have to like send them an email from Test Flight, and so now we can kind of, and Daniel can speak a little bit more to that. We did a current location feature as well, so like now when a rider is like requesting a ride, we can pick up their GPS location and there we go.
Yeah, right there. Yeah, so there's just been a lot of like things like, because literally how the app is built is like Mike and I drive still a lot. Like we'll go out on Friday night and like drive, and like riders will be like, hey, can you like build this, or like how come I can't get my current location in the app like Uber, or how come like this thing does this weird thing, and like the app was really ugly at the time too. So we just kind of like kept a list of just like everything the rider said, and we didn't really have time for it, but like we actually started going through all those things they asked us for in the rides. So that's a lot of how we build this thing, is we just go out and drive, do things that either we like, or we're like, if a passenger says something, we're like, we'll go home that night and just add it into the app really quick. So it's like a really fast feedback loop.
Did anybody request to bring the candy back?
Or the milk?
We brought the milk back a couple of times. I think the Milk Movers is just one of the most extraordinary marketing things, because it's just, we did it again this past spring, because we have a couple awesome employees too. And Daniel Kwan is one of them. And we told about the Milk Movers, and this man loves it. And he just like embraces it wholeheartedly. And you see somebody do one of these deliveries, and it just brings so much joy. Like it is like one of the funniest things you'll ever see. But there are definitely riders in Bloomington who are like, hey, where is your vending machine? Because you drive them all the time, and they're college kids having fun too. And they're like, where's the vending machine? So
yeah, or there's sometimes it's funny because people don't know we're the founders, so like get in the car and they'll be like, what idiots made this app? They don't even make any money.
And then what do you say? You're like, yeah, they're such idiots.
Yeah, I'm just like, oh yeah, some dumb people probably.
Yeah.
So do you think think of all the changes that you're able to make, and I don't know if you've been able to get some loans to help, cushion the blow of everything that's happened, but do you think that COVID is kind of like a blessing or a curse or a mix of both? Because when would you have ever gotten the time to do all of this?
I think we still would have had time because the summer months still like we had time to do this stuff. It just like it now got elongated. I think it will end up become a blessing though, because like what we're gonna have to do is figure out how to. We keep talking about how we have to move away from being a seasonal business. We're gonna have to figure out like how do you build like a sustainable marketplace that like can subsist not only off students because we're good at that, but like locals. Because if we can figure out like actually the best way we convert riders is our drivers hand them business cards in Uber rides and say you should take a Nomad home, and they convert them that way. If we can get good at converting just Uber riders into our platform who are not students, then we'll be able to go to like Indianapolis, any of these college towns, and like really build like we'll basically be able to go to any city and figure that out, not just college towns. So I think that'll make us a lot stronger.
Did you guys ever get any pushback on the name when you were at Y Combinator? Did they ever ask you to change it or anything?
So the original name was B-Town Rides. And I remember talking to my friend and he was like, well, that means you can only go to B named cities for the rest of the company. And so then we kind of like transitioned into Nomad. But Nomad, we've really loved the name. No one's ever pushed back on it. Like the coolest thing is like our riders, like you'll hear them, we'll see them on the street and they're like, hey, I'm going to take a Nomad home. Like they use it like a verb or a noun, like Venmo or like,
yeah,
it's pretty cool.
And share the inspiration behind that as well, Dan.
So when we started Nomad, I was actually living out of my van. So like I moved to basically my senior year, what would have been my senior year of college. I moved to California, bought like a crappy minivan, ripped out all the back seats and just threw a bed back there. And so I was like living out of my car. I did this for about 8 months. And I remember I was talking to Mike and he was like, cause we were trying to think of names. He was like, man, like I got to get a more nomadic lifestyle like you. And I was like, that's the name, Nomad. It's like, that's where it came from.
Wait, where did you shower?
So I had like, it was actually pretty interesting. There's like this really nice bougie mall is outside of Sacramento, like in this suburb. And it was like, they had a gym there. They had like hot tubs, showers, like body wash, shampoo, everything you needed. Wi-Fi.
Fabian, it's anything you could imagine you would need.
Yeah. So I was literally
luxurious.
Yeah. So I was working as a software developer out there. My work was like 1 minute away. I would go to work during the day and then I would come home to my gym, and I would literally just code at my gym for like till they closed for like 6 or 7 hours when we were building Nomad. And then I would just go into my car and sleep in the parking lot. And it was like shared with the hotel. So it was like normal to leave your car there overnight. And then I would just rinse and repeat. And that's how we built Nomad, like the app part.
Wow.
That sounds awesome. I would legit. Like for real,
My mom was incredibly mad.
Yeah. We went to, that was my senior year of college too. And so we were going out to Yosemite to like hike and stuff for spring break. And it was like me and some college friends who didn't know Daniel or didn't know him well. And we like got a rental car, flew to San Francisco, drove out to Yosemite and got to our cabin. And Daniel's sitting there in this old 1997 minivan. And these guys are just like, who is that? He's like sitting there reading a book in his van, like waiting for us to get there. I was like, that's my buddy Dan. Like, it was just so funny. That van was something else.
Did you have like a really, really long hair at the time?
No, I had really short, because my whole thing is like, if you're actually homeless, like you have to look nice. Because like people, if you look bad, then like they're going to know you're homeless. Because no one knew I was sleeping in my car at the parking lot. My boss found out, but he didn't care. He just thought it was weird.
That's amazing. Yeah. So, we'll kind of start to bring this conversation to a close, but where do you guys see this going in the future? I mean, we can kind of somewhat see the light at the end of the tunnel as states start to reopen. I know Indianapolis just announced that they're going into stage 4. And so that means that we're almost back to like life is normal, right? We can start gathering in big groups like we used to. Restaurants might be fully open. So what does the road ahead look like for you guys right now?
Yeah, really the roadmap for us is just, we're going to go through all the Big Ten college campuses, do what we did in Bloomington, like we're talking Ohio State, Purdue, Penn State, go through all them, then the top 30 college towns in the United States. And just off basically those college towns, we can build the 4th largest rideshare company in the United States. And then from there, go into the cities. But right now it's really college focused rideshare.
Yeah. And that's something we have to keep a really close pulse on as well. Because it's like, in 2 months, like when school is open back up, like we still don't know what's going to happen. Like IU is saying they're going to come back, but a lot of stuff is still supremely up in the air. And so we're very much like, we love the college markets and we love that path and we think we can get really good at it, but it's also like, we need to be able to survive. And so not being a seasonal business is something that's very important to us. So like anything, it's like, we don't know what tomorrow holds really. Just doing our best what we can today. And then when that time comes, we'll make that decision.
Well, I think of like, so how I built this, you listen to so many of their podcasts and they start during the 2008 recession. So many people were without jobs. Everyone was bootstrapping something. You're here bootstrapping something. And maybe I'm being very hopeful here, but maybe this is going to push you in a direction that you never would have gone because you had to go figure it out because of COVID. And I think like, I'm excited by this story because I think this is the story that could say, well, COVID-19 was the time that we created whatever it is that made us successful. And that's really exciting to me, but I know I'm not in your shoes, so I'll just watch from afar and cheer you on.
Yeah,
definitely.
Yeah, and that was something, it was like, we were right there on the precipice too, where it's like, if we could have gotten Champaign to that level, like come this May, we would have just started doing the software updates this summer. And it's like that timing, it's like, oh, like we were so right there. And it just took like a couple months from us. And so it's just like, but we are like, we're able to do, yeah, it's at our control. So.
No, I love it. I'm very excited for you guys to do that. I think that having the energy of like, how can we take down these other rideshare apps? I love the energy that brings. Who is number 3?
So right now it's Via.
See, I've never even heard of it. I've heard of it.
They're in like the big cities like Chicago and New York. They do a lot of carpool. They're actually kind of like dying right now.
Well, that's good for you, right? Once you guys are going into bigger cities. So I've got some fun questions. I don't know what they're going to be. So hopefully you guys are down to play a little bit of a game.
Yeah.
Are you guys familiar with Barstool Sports? You know them?
Yeah. I'm a big fan of Pardon My Take.
Okay. So they've got a game out there called Ask the Internet. It's a card game, right? Okay. I took out all the bad ones that have all the sex questions that involve family members, so we won't get weird on this episode. But I thought it might be fun to ask a few of these. So Haley, I'm going to have you play along as well since you don't have these cards in front of you.
Oh no. I didn't consent to this.
Like I said, I took out all the bad ones. So
the premise is you're just asking a question and like,
I just need the answer from each of you.
Okay.
All right. So this one's very simple, right? And I don't know which cards are coming up, but this is funny based on our conversation. And I promise I didn't look for this one, but if you could be homeless in any city, where would you choose?
Oh, it's easy. El Dorado Hills, California. I know the perfect spot.
I think I'd go to San Diego.
I have no idea. So I'll just tag along with that.
Oh, or Hawaii. Hawaii would be a good one.
I would go to Hawaii for sure.
Don't go somewhere cold.
Absolutely not.
All right. This one, I don't know how old any of you are, but you all look younger than I am. So you might not know this show or the reference, but if you were on an old episode of Room Raiders, what would you be most afraid of being found? Right.
I think I get the preface of the show.
People raid your room and it's unexpected. So you don't know what they're going to find.
I actually have a good one. So you guys can go, but
I'm trying to look around. I can't find anything.
I guess like my computer passwords, but that's not even my room.
My computer passwords.
So a fun fact, I guess most people know, I have a Holland Lop rabbit. That's my pet. So I have this bunny who's litter box trained that just bops around my room. and I just bought a 5-pound bag of hay.
Wow.
And I don't know what to do with it. So it's just been sitting in my room like this. So there you go.
Is that its food?
Yeah, they eat like, it's like 80% of their food is hay, which I wasn't actually abiding by. Actually, there's a long story behind that. I was like feeding my bunny junk food and I had no idea.
Yeah, that doesn't sound good.
There's not many like, forums on how to like feed your bunny properly. So I had to look into that. But anyways.
Carrots.
What the hell? All right. We're going to make these quick. If you could be part of a crew from any TV show or movie, what crew would it be?
Ooh. That's a good one. It's a very good one. Trying to think of it.
Friends. I love Friends.
Oh gosh, come on, Daniel, you're better than that.
No, Friends is one of my favorite shows.
Favorite friend, the only answer is Ross like Ross.
I think I might have to say The Sopranos.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. Not that like I actually would want to, like that's.
Harry Potter for sure.
Absolutely.
Not even a question.
That's a good one.
Good choice.
Yeah.
Okay.
But then you'd have to be like a child again.
Oh,
They could-
if I were on Harry Potter, I would do it. Not a question.
What do you mean? Like be a good wizard or like?
Oh, well, yeah. Duh. I know my stuff, but I mean, I would go through childhood all over again if it meant that I could be involved with the Harry Potter franchise.
All right. Here we go. If any time you wanted to eat an animal, you had to kill it yourself, would you still eat meat?
No.
I've thought of this because I don't think like I feel like hunting is bad unless you're like willing to like be the one that does that. But yeah, I think I would. Yeah.
I don't have anything morally against it. I think I'd just be too lazy to do it.
I think that's a perfect answer. It's like, that's a lot of work. All right. Last one here. And the answer cannot be money. If you could have an endless supply of anything, what would it be?
Chipotle burritos.
That is good.
I think handmade pasta.
That sounds good.
It's phenomenal. Fabian, I want you to answer this too.
Vinyl records, for sure.
Yeah. I think I might have to say books, but I feel like that's a really lame answer. I feel like there's something better that I'll think of.
Hat.
You're going to wake up in the middle of the night and you're like,
Oh, shoes. Yeah, shoes maybe.
yeah. You a shoe collector?
No.
No.
Very amateur. There's just something about the feeling of putting on a new pair of shoes. It's like nice.
I love it. Where can people find out more about Nomad Rides, especially those that are at IU Bloomington or University of Illinois, Urbana-Champaign? Where can they catch a ride?
Yeah, so you can download our app on the App Store. So we're on all the major app stores. So if you're a user looking for a ride, you can go to the Google Play Store or you can go to the Apple App Store. If you're a driver, you can go to our website, www.nomadmoments.com, to sign up. And we just kind of ask your name, your phone number, your city, so that we can be in contact with you when it comes time to expand to your city. And then, yeah, we're not super active on social media with our company. So those are the main places.
I like your stance on that.
Yeah. You can follow me on Twitter, but besides that, I'm not great on Twitter. Mike McHugh. That's my Twitter handle, I think.
Daniel, any last words before we say goodbye?
No, we appreciate being on the podcast. It's fun.
Yeah, this was a lot of fun.
Yeah, absolutely. You guys, thank you so much for being on. Haley, great to be hosting with you again. This was fun.
Yeah, it's been a while.
As we like to say, drink culture, know your city.
We're out.